on blast.
We're going to start this episode of You Killed It Off with You Killed It Off makes it sound like a totally different podcast, with a listener comment. I'm John Chidley Hill.
And I am Sheldon Alexander.
And Michelle Francis, longtime listener, who, by the way, said some very kind things to us, Sheldon, that I'll forward you, okay. I guess, once we're done recording. But she wanted to point out, last episode of You Killed It, we were talking about Arissa's exit, where she just flipped everyone off, gave the old half-baked, fuck you, you're cool, fuck you, I'm out, you know?
Yeah.
There's our explicit tag for this episode. But Michelle flagged for us a lengthy Twitter rant, I guess, where Arissa explained what was going through her head. And it's a lot. There's 20 tweets in this chain. But the big takeaway is that Arissa, has a very strong gluten allergy. And even cross-contamination could set her skin off, and put her in significant pain. And because of the circumstances of filming, she had her own food, but she had her own cutting board. She couldn't even have crumbs from bread on it. And other people would use that, or her food would get contaminated in whatever way with allergens for her, and it would have to be thrown out. You're not gonna be able to track down a breadcrumb, right? And to get new food would take several days because of COVID-19 protocols and quarantining the food, and then having to tape over the name brands so it can be in the house and get all that stuff. So she, in her words, was either in pain, having an allergic reaction, or super hungry. And she also singled out Alton for being two-faced, in a word. Again, I'm really summarizing this. This is a long, frankly, pretty level-headed analysis from Arissa. So just there was more going on that we didn't see, and she actually pointed to one of the challenges. She pointed out that you can see that she's doubled over in pain when TJ's giving them the rules, and she's manically scratching her eyes because they're so itchy because she's in the midst of a severe allergy attack. So that that's I think some important context that we didn't have. Everyone was pretty down on Arissa for quitting, but that I think is some important context.
No, for sure. Totally. And I'll always be here for the added context. So nothing wrong with that at all. Totally get it. Totally understand. It sucks that it went down that though.
Yeah, it does. Because I would have been interested to see how that competition would have played out between her and Beth. I liked how Darrell, to kick off episode 5, how Darrell put it, where he says to Beth, dominating performance. Yes. Darrell's been great all season. I also have to ask, because we've been talking a lot about the music on this podcast, a little Alanis Morissette, uninvited, national hero up here in Canada. Are you a big Morissette guy? You rock with Alanis?
I pay respects to the fact that, that's one of the OGs in terms of, my youth.
Yeah,
knowing what was going down. I can't say it's been on my Apple Music playlist recently or anything like that, but yeah, give respects.
I don't want to be an Alanis Morissette hipster here, but I was a fan of hers way back when she was on You Can't Do That on Television. So
well played.
Early days YTV.
Yep.
This is our deep cut Canadian content just to kick things off right.
Oh yes. What are we talking here? Episode 5? That's what we're on?
Yes, episode 5.
I mean, it was interesting because the way that it ended, Arissa leaving, but now we're going into this episode where you kind of know at this point the game is really beginning because alliances are out. We're starting to see more and more twists come out, and you gotta solidify those bonds. So the way that it starts with Beth and Cyrus talking about how much they both needed each other, and him being mad that he went out like a chump however long ago it was, 11 years ago. It was
11
kind of
years ago.
interesting. But these episodes very much, I want to say, tell you what's going to happen. Like, you kind of know where the episode's going right off the beginning, right?
Absolutely.
I found it's been like that throughout this season. And I feel like the more that I get into this season of the challenge, I feel like it's more of an intro to people. Like, that's what it's meant for, right? Like, we like it. I think it's been okay. Like, I'm not, I don't think it's amazing. I don't think it's horrible or anything like that. I'm just like, okay, this is all right. But every time I'm viewing it, I'm thinking, okay, this is just introducing people to the challenge. Like, this is like challenge light.
Yeah, that's exactly the phrase I was going to use. I had similar thoughts, less so about the formatting of each episode, although you're totally right that they definitely telegraph what's going to happen every episode. But in my mind, it's more challenge light because people are taking it seriously, but not as seriously as it's sort of like, I don't want to call them amateurs because that's not fair, but like the people that are competing on regular seasons of the challenge, they're playing to win from day one.
Yeah.
And like, I think in some ways this is more entertaining because people are more relaxed and they're drinking and they're partying and they're hooking up. But it's not nearly as competitive. And we even see it sort of in this opening scene where, everyone's talking about how like, oh, now diplomacy's out the window. Now, like lines are being drawn. People are getting more serious about competing. On a regular season of the challenge, people walk into the house and are like, people have formed alliances before the seasons even start rolling, right? Like, we have people sliding into each other's DMs being like, all right, here's our crew of 4 for the season. You know what I mean?
For sure.
And like physically trained up. And I know this is obviously an older cast, so not everyone is in that kind of shape. But like, it is, I think challenge light is a good way of putting it. I'm still enjoying it, but it's definitely a different flavor.
You still get to see a bunch of different characters, and we move on, and like Alton, is like climbing the wall and all that. And I thought it was funny because you mentioned Darrell, and like my line of the episode was super early, but it's Darrell. He says, sure, go climb a wall or whatever y'all want. And I hope y'all fall and bust your head so I can win the money. Like, you're right about Darrell. Darrell, whether it's a new challenge or old challenge, Darrell's here entertaining us and giving us great lines. So I appreciated that. But if we go to the actual, like this, the daily competition, they set it up as a mini challenge, right? So it's basically a race. You have to carry a huge log with your team, pardon me, and you race to different checkpoints. And at the different checkpoints, you have to solve a puzzle. As you solve that puzzle, you pick up another log, you go to another checkpoint, so on and so forth. And along the way, you lose numbers till eventually the last run, you're carrying a log by yourself to the very end. The other twist, though, is that we find out that there's no more lifesavers. And I think that was interesting. I found that interesting, but I like that twist. But let's save the twists for a bit because let's go. What do you think about that?
I just want to say, Jemmy is so fucking smart because she says, whenever TJ is vague with his words, you have to pay extra attention.
Yeah.
And again, I know I've said this on previous episodes of You Killed It, but this is an advantage that Jemmy, Darrell, and Anissa, and I guess Derek have, where because they've been on the show more recently, they know some of the production tells.
Yeah.
They view the game in a different way. Right? Mm-hmm. And like some of these people that are on the show, this would be their first time meeting TJ Lavin.
Yeah.
right? So they don't know how to read TJ, who's a little inscrutable in his way. But
Mm-hmm.
Jemmy is just so right that like whenever he gets vague, something's up. And this was a classic example. No more lifesavers. Like it's clear that they're not just gonna like not replace it with something. Like there's something else coming. Um so early on, as you said, they're broken up into teams and they're large teams of six, I guess it was. Six, five.
6, yeah.
And early on, this is my line of the episode. Darrell says of Big Easy, that boy must have been watching goddamn Wheel of Fortune his entire life because Big Easy, the first puzzle is they have to do math equations, and the math equations, like the answer has a corresponding letter. So then you have to run, go get the letter, and then you're spelling something out. And Big Easy is able to guess correctly some of the letters to get the first answer to help his and Darrell's team.
Yeah.
Curious, are you a big Wheel of Fortune guy?
I can't really say anymore, but like, I get it. I feel like we're of age where if you're a certain age group, you remember the Commodore 64.
Yes.
Is it Commodore 64? Is that the computer that had the
Yeah,
old
yeah,
Wheel of
yeah.
Fortune game? When I was in, I feel like I must have been in grade 1, if I
Yep.
remember that correctly. But yeah, of course, obviously growing up, Pat Sajak and Vanna White still a thing. Pat Sajak actually making an appearance recently on the Lebitard show. Anyone who watches that, Pat Sajak's a regular on the Lebitard show, and I mean, if you get the show, then that makes sense. If you don't really watch the show, you're kind of like, what? But either way, yes, Wheel of Fortune, really cool. Not mad at Wheel of Fortune at all. So to see Big Easy basically pick things up there is interesting, but it made sense. Like after a while, after you get a certain amount of letters, yeah, it's kind of simple, kind of makes sense, right? And the
Yeah.
Copper team was first, which is the Big Easy, Darrell, Ruthie, Kate, Mark, and Anissa team. They were the first ones out to get to the next or to leave the first checkpoint. And as they're going up the hill and carrying the log, the focus to me really shifts to the fact that who needs a break, right? And I feel like that team wanted a break, but Mark was being a leader and kept saying, no, let's keep going, let's keep going, let's keep going. Meanwhile, Alton was gassing out like crazy.
Well, I want to talk about both Big Easy and Alton because I noticed, yeah, Mark was really motivating his team, and there's some mentally tough individuals. Like Anissa is tough as nails, as an example, right?
Yep.
But one thing, this episode reminded me of why I dislike Big Easy.
Okay. Because he's
I'm not.
annoying.
He is annoying, and specifically, what bothers
Can
me
you hear
about
that,
him.
by the way? Or no?
I can. Yeah,
Okay.
that's fine.
Do you say you can?
I can. Yeah,
Oh, okay.
that's all right. Whatever. We're pros.
It's totally fine.
He. There's a moment where they're showing the team struggling, and my guy has like a single hand underneath the log, and like his arm is like at a 90-degree angle. Like he's walking as far away as possible while still touching the log. And I'm like, let's say that log weighs 200 pounds. He's maybe carrying 2 pounds of it. Meanwhile, who's tiny, is under it and like totally shouldering the burden. And I'm not here to like shame anyone on their body type. Mm-hmm. But I always find that Big Easy is the first to cut corners. He's always the first one to gas out. And like part of it is mentality, right? And like, how can you, when you're obviously a larger person than Katie, how can you lay a single hand on a log when you see someone so much smaller than you just grinding it out?
Yeah.
Right. And like,
I think it just went because he knew that being boys with Mark kind of gives him a bit of a pass, right? Like he knows he has some extra rope to, not be good, if that makes sense. And the fact that they were being led so well by Mark and Kendall, right? Like
Yeah.
it just made everything work so smoothly. I
And
don't
then
know,
we
but I
get
think
to, sorry, go ahead.
no, I was just gonna say like that was the interesting part, right? Like there wasn't much, or at least they didn't show us much yelling from Mark's team at all. But the next phase of all this is where things get really interesting
Well, sorry,
because
I want to talk about Alton versus Cyrus as well in terms of mentality,
okay,
because Alton is in fantastic shape.
hmm
Cyrus is not as in good shape,
yeah,
but Cyrus has like a messed up ankle and is giving her. And like, this is not just my opinion, but like Jemmy notices it too that
hmm
Alton is totally gassed out, and yet Cyrus is visibly struggling but not complaining and still has the log on his shoulder and he's still in there getting it out. And to me, again, this is another example of mentality, right? And like, there might be other things going on. You know, Alton maybe didn't have enough um, carbs like a day or two before.
yeah,
Obviously, he's to be in the kind of shape he's in, you have to be very diet conscious, which I
yeah,
like, sure. I also think though that like when you're in the challenge house, you can count on the fact that you're going to be so physically active that like it almost diet almost doesn't matter anymore.
hmm
Like it's okay if you're having pasta every day
yeah,
because you know what's it like what's it matter when you're running 10 miles every day or however active they are, like it's you can have those potato chips because you're going to burn it off, it doesn't matter.
for sure, for sure. Yeah, I just think it was sad to see, and credit to Cyrus for at least gutting it out and keep on going and not getting mad at Alton in the moment, right? Because he could have, and you've seen situations like that throughout watching watching all this where you notice and you see, oh, wait a second, uh, this is hurting the team more because they're arguing. That didn't happen. So you got to give
No.
Cyrus credit for that for sure. But as they got to the next checkpoint, it was a breakdown where the teams split up even more and you're now just partnered with someone. And I think who you ended up partnered with definitely played a factor, and you would need to help that. Like you need to make a good decision on that for sure, like right away, because that would make or break how well you would do. And you have to put together this puzzle, and there's a board, and you got to memorize, and it's a challenge logo, but it's all with different colors, but they're all kind of similar at the same time. And you know, you have to memorize the board, run across, and put together your puzzle piece. But because again, it's so similar, and I think it would be tough because you're also tired. So now, like, what are you also seeing while you're exhausted? That also plays a part into it too. And then you get it checked and you have no idea. The thing to me that made it the equalizer was even if you start putting the pieces together and then you get a check, you don't really know what's wrong. And there's like 20 something pieces that you're putting up there. So like who knows, how do you know what you have wrong? So I thought that was interesting. Um
I also thought it was interesting. Well, it'd be impossible if you're colorblind. Like you would stand no
oh yeah,
chance.
for sure.
And like not to get like deep into color theory, but if you're working with a partner and you have two different definitions of what navy blue is
Okay.
or like teal or whatever, like you wouldn't even be able to like describe to each other. Like even what you were saying about how the colors are all so similar. Durrell was sort of explaining that when he was doing a confessional, like a straight to
Mhm.
camera. And at one point, one of the colors he listed off, like I disagreed with his definition of that color, or at least the color they showed when he said, I think he said teal. I was like, I wouldn't have called that teal. And like
Hmm.
I could just see, like as he said, like you're hot, you're sweaty, you're tired, you're stressed out, and someone saying like, "Oh yeah, no, the navy green one," and you're like, "Wait, what are you talking about?" Like
Yeah.
it would be challenging because everyone sees colors differently, right? To some degree. So if you have any sort of color blindness or like a slight definition, like difference, a difference in definition,
Yeah,
this could be a nightmare. It's not like Numbers, which are cut and dry.
for sure. And, you know, again, the other big part of all this was who you picked as a teammate. And despite Mark being there first, they didn't do really well at all. A lot of people on Mark's team didn't really do too well, but Kendall and Latarian, um, they did well. They complete the board first. And it was funny because they did show the scene when they first got there, and Latarian was like, oh no, I'm grabbing Kendall. Like he knew who he wanted to be partnered with. And same thing with Kellyanne and Derek, who were the second team to be done. And then as the teams filter through, you're just basically making a run for the finish. And by that point, Latarian ends up coming in first. He screams really loudly, and then the beat kicks in for Mo Money, Mo Problems.
Yes, I noted that too.
And I just thought that was great editing. The way that they put that together, like it just like it was screaming to my soul. I mean, I don't even know what happened after. I don't know who came in like third, fourth, fifth, whatever, because I was just too busy rocking out to Puffy and Mace. Right? Like that's a big time song.
That was a massive song. Was that 97 that like the video came out?
It's got to be somewhere around there. 97, 98, somewhere around there.
That was huge. And also, I love that this is our second straight episode where Mace is mentioned. Like that's how you know things are rolling, when you've got Mace in the mentions.
It's funny that this is now old school, right? Because I mean, it definitely is, but it's just funny to think of it in that sense, right? And I remembered recently, so I had this moment a couple years ago where, so for people who don't know, we do the pod, we're both from Toronto, right? Every summer over something called Caribana Weekend, which is a huge like Caribbean festival. Drake also throws OVO Fest. And OVO Fest obviously has become a really big thing as well, because Drake will bring out special guests. And I've been to almost all of them, right? Like every year, it's just a fun thing. It's also my birthday weekend. So it also just like provides fun and entertainment to an already good weekend as is, right? So I've missed, I want to say 2 or 3 years of OVO. And I think they've done 9 of them. But one of them I missed, I was in London, England that summer. And the other one I missed, I remember I just had a backyard party that weekend. And I remember I didn't end up going to OVO the next day because I was just like tired. So like it was just a long weekend. We, you know, partied the whole weekend. And then by the time the Monday rolled around, I was like, I'm tired. I'm just going to chill. And I don't suffer from FOMO. That's not something that I do. That's just not, most of the time, if I'm going to go do something, I'm just going to go do it. Right? I'll figure out a way and go do it. I don't really, FOMO is not something that I speak that language. But I remember sitting there and being on Twitter when the timeline just went crazy because Puffy and Mace came out at OVO Fest. And I can't lie, I had serious FOMO in that moment. I've seen Stevie Wonder at an OVO Fest before, right? I've seen Jay-Z and Eminem at OVO Fest before. And that was all amazing. More recently, I've seen Nelly, which has become a conversation recently, which is a story for off air, but we'll get to that. But the Puffy and Mace, that was a FOMO for me, because that's just like childhood me would have really appreciated seeing Puffy and Mace.
I don't blame you for being salty about missing out on that, because we already said this last episode, but Puffy and Mace and Bad Boy Entertainment were so formative. Mm-hmm. And like so big. Like I have cousins from New Zealand, and one of them came to Toronto for the summer between grade 8 and grade 9, mm-hmm. which is when I'll Be Missing You was like the number, like that was the song that summer, right? Like that was a huge track.
Yeah.
It was like this time last year, it was like May, June. And also like I graduated from grade 8, and like that was like obviously a big song along with Green Day, Good Riddance. Mm-hmm. But I remember telling my like 40-something-year-old New Zealander cousin about like Notorious B.I.G.'s death and why it was a big deal. Like this,
yeah.
So to like, and Mace is probably, I mean, I'm a big 112 guy, but mm-hmm. Mace is probably my favorite member of the Bad Boy family.
Yeah.
Maybe Craig Mack, who's underrated and doesn't get enough love. But
Okay.
yeah, so I'm with you. I If I were in your shoes, I'd also feel some kind of way about missing out on that at OVO
For
Fest.
sure. And speaking of missing out on the finishing this event were Cyrus and Beth, who they just timed out. They didn't even finish that puzzle. Meanwhile, as mentioned, Latarian won by a lot. And
Mm-hmm.
then Kendall, so they're both safe from elimination. Um, Cyrus has to go to the arena, right?
Yeah.
For coming in last. And here comes the drama because Cyrus and Alton are having conversation, and Cyrus is very honest. He's like, I want to go against you. And we very rarely in the history of all the challenge do we ever see, normally it's like back, it's behind the back. Normally there's like multiple conversations going on where, to Alton's face, Cyrus might be like, oh yeah, I don't know. I got to figure it out. I don't really know. I'm not sure. And no. Cyrus is like, no. I want to go against you. I was even questioning whether you were throwing it and you were trying to force me in because that's how bad you were doing in this challenge. And I was just like, whoa, I didn't even think that far. It made me wonder, is there some other underlying issues or tension between those two dudes? Because it just seemed weird. But I mean, he was just mad at him for costing the event, which I don't really think it did cost him the event, but we can discuss that.
I don't think it, like, let's talk about it now. I don't think it cost him the event.
No, of course not.
Because
You
there's other
failed the
people
puzzle
that
by
were,
a lot.
yeah, there's nothing. Alton had nothing to do with Beth and Cyrus not being able to finish. And the proof is also Big Easy and Katie were second last,
Yeah.
right? And
Yep.
Big Easy and his Wheel of Fortune skills got his team out to a huge lead.
Exactly.
So even though Big Easy kind of half-assed it, Mark carried the day to get them to the next checkpoint. So Big Easy and Katie had the opposite in the first leg, and yet they were almost just as bad as Beth and Cyrus. So it
It
doesn't really
really made
hold
no
weight.
sense. It didn't
Yeah.
make any sense. But Alton he thought that it should be Big Easy, which leads to a very interesting. I will say this season, the deliberations are very interesting. No matter
They
which
are.
way they go, they've always been interesting during this season. And this time around, Mark takes charge and says, hey, Cyrus wants Alton. And I thought it was good. A lot of good points were brought up from a lot of different people, which is very, very rare.
Yeah.
But it made me think, what would I do in this situation? And to be honest, for me, I think I would give Cyrus what he wants because, the other side that's not brought up a lot is if you lose, you want to be able to say that you went out with your head held up and there's no shame in going out against Alton. Do you know what I mean? And I think that plays a big part of it. I think a lot of these people, going back to the point that you made at the beginning, there's a lot of, it'd be great to win money, but there's a lot of people who are just kind of happy to be here because I haven't done a challenge in a while. And so it's just cool to kind of be here. So I would give Cyrus what he wants. If you want to go out against Alton, cool. No skin off my back. No problem.
I also think that if you're a guy on the show and you look at Cyrus versus Alton, you want it versus Big Easy as the other obvious option.
Mm-hmm.
I would rather go against Cyrus, like in the final.
For
like
sure.
You gotta be thinking, like, who do you want to go against in the final? I'd rather have Big Easy, who has a history of gassing out,
Mm-hmm.
and Cyrus, who has a bad ankle, rather than Alton. And at the very least, I would want, like, they've gotten away from this on the main show of the challenge, but I think that if you can get the best against the best in an elimination, that's always going to benefit you.
Yeah.
And I think this is I wouldn't say that Cyrus is the best, but like that decision's taken out of their hand. But if you can get Alton in there, find out what happens. Find out. One thing I have to note is Nehemiah votes for Derek, and I can't tell if Derek was like mad or like laughing it off mad, but like they vote for each other. Like,
Yeah, I don't know.
what
That was a
a
weird
cop
one.
out. But I think voting for Alton is the obvious thing. He gets voted in pretty handedly. It's like 8-3 to 1-1 because of Derek and Nehemiah's whatever. And then there's a critical scene. So Cyrus is back at the house because he's obviously he's not allowed to participate in the deliberations. People are returning to the house. Someone, I forget who, tells Cyrus, oh, it was Latarian, tells Cyrus, yeah, we voted for Alton. Alton and Yasela are walking into the house. Cyrus stands up and extends his hand to be like, hey, like, may the best man win. And Alton snubs him. How do you feel about handshakes in general and this snub?
It's just unnecessary. But
Yeah.
like I get it. Like he in Alton's mind, he felt disrespected by, you know, Cyrus wanting to throw him in. So he's gonna return the favor and disrespect him back by not shaking his hand. It's petty, but hey, petty makes for good television sometimes. Not mad at that.
It is. I'll say, like, in general, I don't like handshakes. I feel like handshakes are overdone. I'm not a big
Okay.
handshake guy. For me, there's only like a few occasions in which you do shake hands.
Okay.
The first time you meet someone, at the conclusion of that first meeting, if you agree to a deal, or if you're congratulating someone. But I will
Okay.
say, I agreed. I thought Cyrus, because like Cyrus and Alton, that conversation they had where Cyrus was like, I think you sabotaged me. Although I don't agree with what Cyrus was saying, it was sort of like a civil but competitive conversation. And it certainly started in a place of friendship and respect.
Mm-hmm.
And from Cyrus's position, by trying to shake Alton's hand, he's trying to continue that like respectful, competitive vibe, right? Like, let's go get it sort of thing. And for Alton to be so petty, I didn't love. And Latarian didn't love it either, because Latarian witnessed the whole thing.
Yeah. No, it was a weird one. It was
I would
definitely a
remember
weird
that
one.
if I was Latarian.
Definitely a weird one. Um, Basically we get a party scene, right? But I guess what we're getting to really is Alton and Yasela.
Yeah.
That was
Mm.
I mean, yeah. There's something going down there, right?
Yeah. Well, what I like is, so at first we see them at the party, sort of off to the side,
Mm-hmm.
having a little chat. And she like pivots the conversation. And in my head, I was like, this is such a like come on move. And Alton, I didn't think was reading the signals, but she talks about how like scratched up her arms are.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, how'd you get scratched up? And she's like, I don't know. And I was like, my guy, she's trying to A, draw attention to her body, and B, invite you to like touch her arms and hands, to like, she's trying to like invite you to initiate contact. And he's not like quite doing it. And then we get to like the night camera in, I assume it was Yasela's bedroom, because she was sitting on the bed and he was sitting on a chair, and she's like massaging his foot and like sort of working her hands up his calves. I'm like, buddy, like, read the room, what's happening here? Like, this is a
Yeah.
beautiful woman that's making her intentions abundantly clear.
Mm-hmm.
Eventually he got the hint, but I was like, man, she's laying it on thick. And like, I'm not criticizing her for that. I just wish he was quicker on the uptake.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean it was interesting, and I was actually surprised that they played it out as far as they did, like to give the 3 seconds of okay, the sheets are covering, and yeah, that's what's going down. Okay, cool. I was surprised to see that. I didn't think they were doing that on this season of the challenge, but they
it's
showed us
it's
that.
rated R, Sheldon, so
This is true. There's a lot more swearing. There's a lot more language for sure, so it makes sense. Um, But we get to the elimination, and you could tell that it looked like a strength challenge, like as you walk in, right? But then TJ comes in with a twist, and he said, there's no lifesavers anymore, but now he says it's a double elimination, meaning whomever your partner was when you lost, that person is going down with you. So Beth now joins Cyrus down there, and Alton has to pick who his partner is going to be. This is an epic twist that I want to see in every challenge season going forward.
Yeah.
Because it just raises the stakes of the strategy. Like, you force people to go in, you force people to pick their partners, you force people to choose their alliances wisely. It just adds such another great level to the gameplay. What did you make of the twist?
I love this twist. And to extend your logic, especially to like port it over to the like real challenge and like the more competitive seasons, that means that people who are perhaps not as good at eliminations,
Yep.
or are not as physically dominant or like good at puzzles or whatever, they have much less value in an alliance. And like, we'll focus on this season as an example. Big Easy's stock just plummeted, as an example, right? Or to a lesser extent, Katie's stock. Like, they might be your friend, they might be good at the politics game, but if like, as your alliance member, their ass is on the line,
yeah,
right? To like bring it back to the actual, like the real challenge. Look at the Big Brother alliance. Josh does not have as much value as he once did. Like, it's frankly not as good enough to be like, oh, we love Josh, he's so sweet. Because like, you also need people in your corner that can go when the bell rings.
Yeah, no, totally agree.
And Alton, when it comes time for someone to choose someone when the bell rings, he goes with arguably the most experienced eliminations competitor of all time, Anissa. What do you think of that choice? Would she be your number one as a potential partner?
I thought it was a really good pick. I mean, the other thing too was seeing what the challenge was going to be. It looked like you needed someone who could help you pull the I don't know what you call those bins, trucks down the track.
Walls?
I don't know. Walls, sure. And so Anissa would definitely be able to help. So I think that was a good pick. I also think that's an interesting part of the twist as well. The fact that you get to see what the challenge is and then pick your partner, right? I think that part's pretty interesting as well. But as we get to it, it was called Over and Under, right? And basically you had to pull, as you said, pull the 4 walls down the track. Then you had to grab a medicine ball, throw them over each wall. One person had to go over the wall. The other person had to punch through the wall. And then you had to do that over and over again. And I think it was the first to 4 would win. So with Alton and Anissa, Alton being the Spider-Man that he is, he's going to climb over the wall. But for Beth and Cyrus, it's going to be Cyrus climbing over the wall. But the problem is here, Cyrus still has his bum ankle. So immediately they're at a disadvantage. And I mean, right then and there, we kind of knew it was a wrap, no?
Yeah, absolutely. And like, I have it in my notes. This seems fucking terrible. Like, this would be so physically demanding. Yeah. Either task would not be easy. You're right. Like, Cyrus and Beth get lapped almost immediately. Like, they're on the first lap, and Anissa and Alton are already on their second lap. And it's because Cyrus, every time he jumps down from the wall, he's landing on his ankle. And like, your choice if you're dropping down is either go more slowly and like lower yourself down the side of the wall rather than like jumping down, or make a conscious decision to land on your good ankle, which is just asking to hurt your good ankle, and then both of your ankles are messed up.
Yeah.
I will say, I was very impressed with both teams. Right? I was impressed with Cyrus's grit. I was impressed with Beth for helping him. She starts like giving him boosts, and like, basically she's bracing against the wall and he's like using her as a step stool.
Yeah.
He's got to be like 230 pounds. Like that is
Yeah.
like to take that weight on your back, your shoulders as Beth would be brutal. And then Anissa and Alton are just killing it. Like I was impressed
Yeah.
with all four. I'm not going to run any of them down. What do you think of their performances?
Totally agree. I mean, they all gave it everything they had, and especially coming off of the last elimination where someone quit right before it started, it was cool to just see, you know, even though Cyrus and Beth knew very early on they were going to lose, like they got lapped, I want to say by this third time maybe, but you know, they still tried. It's not like they stopped. Cyrus was still trying to jump down. You know, Beth was still trying to help him, as you mentioned. It was just good to see them go out and put in work like that on the way out. But I think the question here should Cyrus have picked Big Easy?
I think you like to go against, you mean?
Yeah, to go against. Yeah.
Oh, in
Because obviously they
hindsight, for
granted his
sure.
wish. And it's interesting, right? Because if we play this out, right? Yeah, the easy answer is yeah, of course. Big Easy. But the other part is Cyrus can't climb because of his ankle, and neither can Beth. So let's say he picked Big Easy to go against, but then Big Easy picks Kellyanne or one of the other girls, because probably like who would you think is some of the other girls that would have been able to climb the wall if Big Easy can't, which I think Big Easy might be able to,
Yeah,
right? So I don't know.
I'd say Kellyanne because I mean I know she's big into yoga,
Mhm.
but she's pretty tall
Yeah,
and she's quite fit.
very
And
fit,
like
very
I'm
strong for sure.
like I
But
don't know in terms of strength how compatible yoga is with like rock climbing, but
mhm,
she would have like good arm strength, right? Like those downward facing dogs do impact your arm strength and your
yeah,
grip strength, which would also be important.
yeah. I just think too, either way, it's highlighted that going against Alton was just the wrong play. It was just a wrong
Yeah.
elimination for that at all. And
Well,
he
after
thought it
we,
was going to be a headbanger, right?
yeah,
He was just banking on the fact that it would be a one-on-one headbanger.
especially after we saw Alton climbing the house for funsies.
Yeah.
So
One thing I do want to bring up though,
sure.
I did notice that when they were gone or when TJ was saying bye, he did say, "You guys are done for now. I know we'll be seeing you soon."
Hmm.
I just made note of that. And it just made me think like, wait a second, is there some weird twist coming that we don't know about? I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, is there a
But
shadow house, a shadow bracket or whatever?
I don't know. But as mentioned, Cyrus wanted a physical one on one against Alton, which who knows if that'll ever come. But shouts to Anissa. She did a good job.
She is such a beast in eliminations. I like Anissa more and more. Like I
Mhm.
remember when I first got into the challenge, I was not an Anissa fan, but I think she's good TV. I think she's smart. I think she's funny. I think she's an underrated competitor. And like our standard go-to metric is, would we want to hang out with this person? And I
Yeah.
would definitely want to hang out with Anissa. Like she seems like she's fun, but also like low key, and it'd be good conversations. Like I'd for sure hang out with her.
Yeah. No, that's fair.
I have to ask Sheldon, who killed it for you this week?
So this is a weird one, but I'm gonna say Cyrus did. And
Oh,
it just because I like the fact that he gave his all. He might have made the wrong decisions, he might have made the wrong move, but he gave his all in the challenge, going up the hill, carrying all the weight for Alton and on a bum ankle, and then he gave his all in the elimination. And I know it's counter because MVP who killed it's normally someone that comes out with wins, and Cyrus came out with 0 wins, but I'm giving him marks for effort. I love that he gave his all. And again, hey, maybe I'm just jaded by the fact of what happened in the last episode of someone just quitting for whatever reason. But hey, Cyrus earned my respect, whatever that's worth. And he also earned my MVP, AKA he killed it. What about you?
I'm giving a reluctant MVP to Alton.
Okay.
And here's my logic. I did not like how he performed in the daily competition.
Yeah.
This has been a problem with Alton in the past. And I mean, it really is the past since he hasn't been on the show for like a decade.
Yeah.
But he tends to gas out. He tends to have, you could call it mental toughness, you can call it popcorn muscles. Either way, not a great look for him. But that said, my guy got 2 W's.
Yeah.
Because he made adult friends with Yasela.
Yeah.
Which is certainly a W.
Mm-hmm.
And he won against tough competition. And it wasn't just that he was the superior athlete, but he looked at his choice of potential partners, and I think he probably made the best choice. He could have
I agree with that.
absolutely crushed it with like, I think maybe a Kendall or a Kellyanne would have been very competitive, but Anissa was a great choice, especially if you're Alton and you're like, well, I've got the climbing side of things. I just need someone to like punch through some walls.
Yeah.
Anissa's your woman for that. Anissa has a mean right hook. So, that's 2.5 W's, as much as I disliked how he performed in the daily competition.
No arguments here.
How can the good people find you on social media?
You can find me on Twitter at Shell Alexander, on Instagram at Sheldon Alexander, of course. Like and subscribe on Blast Podcast. You can find us on YouTube and Twitch. What about you?
You can get me on Twitter and Instagram at J Chidley Hill. And until next week, this was You Killed It.
You killed it.